Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your midweek roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. Now, we have a new product of the week this week, and that product is the Zimaboard. If you haven't come across it before, it is a single board server. What is a single board server, you ask? Well, it is a single board computer that is designed to be used as a small, low power, low cost home server. We're also going to be looking at the return of a much loved YouTube series for makers and engineers alike. And we'll be having a quick funding website things, this time over on Kickstarter, for a quite inventive new STEM kit based around the Raspberry Pi Pico. So, with all of that to get through, let's get on with the show. We are going to start this week's show by talking about the Zimaboard, which is the Electromaker product of the week. Now, if you haven't come across the Zimaboard before, this is a single board server. The idea of that being it is a single board computer that is designed to be used as a low power and low cost home server. The thing about this one specifically that I like is that if you are not someone who has necessarily messed around with a home lab before, getting this thing set up is incredibly simple. In fact, for the first time in ages, I had the chance to sit down for just half an hour or so with the Zimaboard, and you're going to see in this episode my experience of going from zero to having a few things up and running using their own Casa OS. And just for the immediate comparison, that is a Raspberry Pi 4 next to the Zimaboard, and we may as well cover now in this introduction part, what is the difference between using a Raspberry Pi 4 or a Raspberry Pi in general as a server and using a Zimaboard? Well, the first one is that this is a x86 board. This has an Intel chip inside it. That means you technically could run Windows on it if you wanted to, but it's a different beast, as it were. Also, you'll notice on the side here there's a PCI slot, there's two Ethernet ports just here, there's two USB 3 ports, there's a display port if you used it, or if you would need to use it, although I've not needed to. I'm going to use this thing headlessly. And at the bottom here as well, there's a few connectors for hard drives as well. You can put up to 36 terabytes through this and use it as a NAS if you want. They include a splitter cable for the SATA, and they also include a power supply that is powerful enough to do everything that this thing will want to do, which is something that you don't necessarily get with a single board computer. Anyway, rather than hear me ramble about it, we do have a Product of the Week article and video from Robin Mitchell as well. So if you want to see the rundown of the Zimaboard and read an article about it, including watching the fantastic video from Robin, then yes, head to the description of the video. You will find a link to that, and that's the first link that you'll find about the Zimaboard. And it's a nice enclosed way of finding out all of the specs about it. Just in short, there are three different variants of the Zimaboard. There is, I've forgotten what the variants are called, but essentially there's a low-powered version and a high-powered version, and they introduced a middle-powered version, and that is different kinds of Intel processor, and I think different RAM variants as well. You will also find in the description a link to the Zimaboard website where you can buy it, or you can just click on the Electromaker Recommends tab just here to get to the Zimaboard shop if you are interested in it. Now, why would you be interested in it? Well, as I said, it's an x86 board, and there's a bunch of things you can do with it. In fact, if you head to Zimaboard's own website, there is a bunch of different examples of different things you can do with it. You can use this as your router if you want. You can use this with Pi-hole on it as the at the point of entry to your home to block all of the ads. You can use it as a NAS, you can use it as a Plex server, and that's some of the stuff that you will see momentarily when I show you my experience with it. But yes, if you would like the rundown of it, you can watch this video from Robin, link to that in the description. But as always, this is a product of the week. And as you may have noticed, if you have been watching the show recently, all of our products of the weeks are given away. So you will be receiving a Zimaboard if you win the product of the week, but it won't be this variant of Zimaboard. It will be something a little bit more special. Yes, the version of the Zimaboard we will be giving away differs to the one that I have. This is the Zimaboard 832, which is the top spec version of it. And this is also a Zimaboard 832, except this is a special one because it has the green livery you are seeing here. As far as I understand, that's the only functional difference, but limited edition things are rather nice. So if you would like to win a Zimaboard 832 Special Edition, the rules are very simple. You need to be a subscriber to this YouTube channel, you need to go down to the comments of this video and tell us what you would do if you won a single board server like this. The Zimaboard 832 is pretty powerful. You're probably going to get a few ideas about what you could do with it by watching the next bit, because I'm going to show you me just getting the very basics up and started with it. And yes, the important thing is you need to leave the hashtag Zimaboard. And this is the same if you want to enter this on social media, that's fine. We have a TikTok channel, we have a Twitter account, all this kind of stuff. As long as you say what you want to do with it and leave the hashtag Zimaboard. Every one of our competitions works by us searching that hashtag across our network and then entering everyone into that competition once, and the winner will be chosen at random and announced on next week's show. So as mentioned, I did have a little bit of time to get started with this Zimaboard, and I really do mean get started. I plugged it into the wall, I plugged an Ethernet port into it, and then I came over to the computer here and started my screen grabbing software. And what you're about to see now is just an edited screen grab of my first few minutes with the Zimaboard. Okay, the camera's not set up right now, so it's just the screen, but I've already just tested that this works, and it does. So just to be clear, the quick start guide says connect Zimaboard with the router, to the router, sorry. So I've got it connected to my power line router that I use up here in the Attic of Dreams. I've connected power to it, and I saw the light indicator go on, and then I am here. I have just come to casa.local, and I'm ready to start my initial account. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to say username, Ian, password, this, and then this, and create. Save. All things are done. And I'm in. That was incredibly simple. So I don't have anything attached to the Zimaboard right now. All I have is the Zimaboard. I've literally just followed the quick start guide. I plugged it in, but it's saying data syncing, which is one of the things that I would definitely be using the Zimaboard for. I'd be using it as a sort of general purpose NAS and maybe Home Assistant thing as well. So let's install SyncThing. Yeah, click install, and it's doing it. And it has done it, it seems. Okay. Whatever, yes. I don't mind. Anonymous usage reporting. The SyncThing admin interface is configured to allow remote access without a password. Oh no. This can easily give hackers access to read and change any files on your computer. Please set a GUI authentication user and password in the settings dialog. Yes, I will. Okay, so I've jumped ahead here just slightly because I want to keep this as brief as possible. So just to recap, I added the SyncThing on the App Store, and I've set up SyncThing on my desktop computer. I actually used SyncTrayzor, which I'll leave a link to in the description. It's just a handy wrapper for SyncThing, which gives you a desktop GUI, which you can't see. Actually, let me just do that. So you can see it, I think. Nope. You still can't see it for some reason. That's very strange. You're going to have to trust me when I say that if you look at the SyncThing GUI that you have here, this is on the Zimaboard that I'm showing you right now. There is an identical one which is wrapped in a Windows app called SyncTrayzor, and I have added the both of these. You can show the unique IDs of each one of them at the top here, and all you do is you add one on one side, and it will give you a thing on the other saying, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I have added this default folder. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just go to Notepad, and I'm going to do a hello world, and I'm going to say file, save as. I'm aware you can't see this, it's not fantastic video, I apologize. And I'm going to go to the folder sync, and I'm going to save this as hello world.txt. Save. Now, I don't know how quickly this will update, but now if I look in the default folder, so it's in config sync. Oh! I saw something just ping. Updated hello world.txt. Excellent. And now where do I find my files? Let's have a look. If I go into files and look in, is it in app data? SyncThing, config, sync, hello world. There it is. Hey, that was super easy. That's really nice. And so that took, I know I turned off, I know there was an edit in there. But that's because I didn't want you to watch me install stuff on my other computer. But yeah, now I have my own home Dropbox that was set up without anything particularly difficult. Now, I'm sure many of you watching the show will have done this before. You'll have set up rsync for your own stuff at home. There's a million and one ways you can do this. I'm not saying SyncThing specifically is great. What I am saying is that without having to think about it in any meaningful way, I started up Casa OS and got it working. Which is amazing, which is really nice. And obviously, if you attach storage to it, then you have you have a lot more than just the 30 gigs that are on board. This could turn into a very long ramble about the Zimaboard, but I don't want this to take up the whole episode, so I'm just going to leave it there. I installed Home Assistant. I was going to spend a little bit of time looking into that and messing around with it, but I don't remember my Home Assistant credentials. It's been a while since I've used it. And frankly, you don't need to see me set up Home Assistant. Getting it running on here was as simple as opening the App Store and clicking the install button, and in the background it installed it and it is now there. There's a bunch of other things as well that you will find useful, and it's, in my mind, these are all open source or things that are working in the same direction as I would be if I was setting up my own from scratch home server. Things that I would want on it is things like, something like Plex, so I can do video streaming at home. But I'd also want some way to be able to grab video stuff from the internet in a way that I can use in a more useful fashion. For me, that would be all Tube Download, because I already use YouTube DL or YTDL, which is the other fork of it, for downloading just the audio from videos, because I spend a lot more time listening to YouTube than watching it these days. I do it when I'm out running. If you like the sound of the Zimaboard, you will probably like the Zimaboard. I haven't come across any issues with it yet. Getting started with it was incredibly easy. Of course, that doesn't mean anything. I haven't done anything close to a deep dive, but there's a huge amount of information out there and people who have done all kinds of stuff with Zimaboard already. And in a world where there are thousands, literally, of single board computers that you could use as some kind of hub to work with a network, I think Zimaboard is a little bit unique. In that it is very easy to use, and it has this quite flashy and nice OS, which, as far as I can tell, has been really well thought out and so far is bug-free. And as it says, it's made by love with Icewhale and you. This is something that you can contribute to. If you want to contribute to Casa OS, I believe that you can through their GitHub page. You can even add community apps. At this stage, there's only one in the App Store, but it's as it says, community contributors not optimized for Casa OS, but provides a basic app experience. Presumably there'll be more things like that coming in future. So if you would like to find out more about the Zimaboard, you can head to our Product of the Week article. You can watch Robin's fantastic video on it. You can also head to the Zimaboard website. And the Zimaboard website also has a bunch of cool ideas as to what you could use their board for, which is kind of to be expected. It's their website. As it says here, you can use it as a NAS, as a VPN. You can use it for streaming, as a software router, as a media server, and for your smart home. And while I haven't started using it for any smart home devices right now, because I don't really have actually much of a smart home setup, I have the bits I could require to make one, but I have no real need for one at this point. I have already pretty much started using this as a personal NAS and as a home media server for streaming. Not because I necessarily wanted to set either of those two things up, it's just because, as you saw, it was so incredibly easy to do. The Casa OS that they have been working on for a while, Icewhale are the company that make Zimaboard. They also make Casa OS, which will run, by the way, on other things. Casa OS runs on x86. It also runs on ARM. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Using their online store, which may just be a wrapper for the linuxservers.io site to get Docker packages, but that doesn't matter. If you don't understand Docker, if you've never done any of this kind of stuff before, just being able to click get this, as you've seen from the video that you just saw, is incredibly easy. And within 5 minutes of having this thing at home, I was ready to, if I wanted to, start using it as a streaming service and all this kind of stuff. If you are interested in finding out more about it, you can head to the Zimaboard website. Now, the price. So Zimaboard comes in 3 variants. The basic variant is the 216, and that is $119.90. Now, if you'd like to find out more about the differences between the models, if I put myself out of the way down here a little bit and maybe make this a tiny bit bigger. So the Zimaboard 216 has an Intel Celeron N3350 processor, an Apollo Lake processor, with 2 gigabytes of RAM. The 432 has an N3450, as does the 832, but the difference between those two is 4 gigabytes of RAM and 8 gigabytes of RAM, respectively. The only other difference is the amount of eMMC you get on board. So the 216 has 16 gigabytes of onboard, I was trying to remember that, 16 gigabytes of onboard storage through an eMMC, whereas the other Zimaboard 832 and 432 have 32 gigabytes. And as previously mentioned, the Zimaboard 216 is $119.90, the 432 is $159.90, and the 832 is $199.90. So if you're looking for a low-cost single-board server to use at home, which will also not cost the earth to run, the Zimaboard is definitely worth a look. I am looking forward to spending a bit more time with it to work out what I can really do with it, because as I have mentioned in previous episodes, this isn't my first rodeo. I went into this with a very hands-off approach, kind of saying like, what if I did know nothing? What if I just follow the user manual to get started, which was, incredibly simple. I don't know if I mentioned this in the other video. The Get Started guide has 4 steps. Plug it into a router, plug it into power, go to casaos.local, and then create an account. I did those things, and then after that, you saw, well, I think you even saw me create my account. And I've done this before. I've set up servers on single board computers. I think most people who are into the hobby world will have done that. The fact that Zimaboard allows people who've never done that before to just get a smart home or a network for working with smart home, or any kind of home smart network. I have no idea what I'm trying to say. The fact that Zimaboard allows people to set up a network without any difficult plumbing is amazing. But also the fact that this is an x86 board designed for use with networking will appeal to a lot more people. You could flash this with pretty much anything you wanted to, and there are lots of examples of people who have done exactly that across the internet. So take a quick look at it, and if you'd like to find out more, you can head to the link in our description. So just a final reminder, if you would like to win the special edition greener than this Zimaboard, head under this video, tell us what you would do if you won a single board server like this, and leave the hashtag Zimaboard. We will be taking all the entries and picking one at random to win on next week's show. Now, we're going to move on to a much-loved series for makers and engineers alike. In fact, it is, in a way, 2 series, because, let's start with a quick history lesson. The Secret Life of Machines was a television series that was on the television at the end of 1980s and early 90s sort of time. I have very fond memories of it, but I don't think I could have watched these live, because I was just slightly too young to really have many memories. I was born in 1985. But I have a lot of memories of this show, so either we must have had a VHS tape of it, or maybe it was repeated. I'm not fully sure. Yes, it was a fantastic show looking at how machines work, both in terms of the machines you have at home and the machines that are used in an industrial sense. It was a really nice aesthetic to the show as well. Now, Tim Hunkin is one of the presenters of that show, and Tim Hunkin has a YouTube channel, and you can find all of the Secret Life of Machines shows remastered on his channel. He has the full episodes remastered, and you can watch them. However, not only that, but some time ago, 2 years ago, and we reported on this at the time, Tim returned to making content, this time for YouTube, with a show called The Secret Life of Components, which was shot in his wonderful workshop that he uses to make his works of mechanical art, is probably the best way to describe it. And if you're not familiar with Tim's work, it's worth looking up Tim Hunkin's artworks. They always have a lot of humor attached to them, sometimes dark humor. They always have a message, and some of them do things the way that you'd expect someone like me to do it, which is with a microcontroller and components that do things at least semi-efficiently. But some of the ways he comes up with doing things are just so wonderfully mechanical and clunky on purpose. In fact, some of the ways he comes up with making his artwork is what gives the artwork its very specific kind of character. So, why am I saying this now? Well, this is just a very long-winded way of me saying The Secret Life of Components Series 3 is now here. In fact, several episodes of it are already out. This is just the advert for it. And by the way, all of the advertisements for each one of the series has been these wonderful stop-motion animations, and a lot of this appears in each episode as well. The production value hasn't dipped at all from being a kind of legit, as it were, television show to YouTube. I mean, as if television is any more legitimate than YouTube these days, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. So if you are a fan of just a very knowledgeable person talking about things from the basics outwards, you will love this show. And also, this isn't just electronics specific. It's called The Secret Life of Components, but if you look at some of the things that he's covered over the years, the first episode of the series was actually about chain, and pieces of chain are the most mechanical things you could sort of imagine. And then he followed up with a thing all about LEDs. So we're moving from mechanical right through to electronic, and he covers almost everything in between, and things you wouldn't necessarily expect someone to talk about, like connectors. One of the earlier episodes was about hinges as well. So yeah, if you are interested in finding out more about this, there will be a link to this video in the description, because from here you can just click through to Tim's channel, where you can find the first few episodes of Series 3 are already live. In fact, yes, I thought there'd been another one that had been released since I first noticed this. He talks about programmable logic controllers in the most recent episode. And then, yes, solenoids, relays, hole cutting. I'm trying not to be overly sort of dramatic with my love of this stuff, but I absolutely adore this. It's one of my happy place things to watch, and I hope that by sharing it with you, you will get a little bit of that as well. If you're enjoying the Electromaker Show, it would mean a lot to us if you take a moment to go down and check that you are subscribed to our channel. Also, if you click like on this video, it doesn't just show us that you like it, it shows YouTube that you like it, and it makes it far more likely that they will recommend it to other people who watch the kind of things that you do. One other thing that you can do, which is free, is to select all here for notifications. Now, these aren't notifications that are going to show up and annoy you. These are just going to show up inside the app here. So if you look up here, we have notifications for the Electromaker Show and for the product of the week. We don't tend to flood our channel with videos, at least not very often, unless we are at a conference. So you're not going to be getting a huge amount of spam from us, but things can quite easily get lost in your subscriptions folder, especially if you have a huge amount of subscriptions like I do. So yes, subscribing, liking, and turning on these notifications are 3 free things that do not take very long that will help the Electromaker Show. However, if you would like to help us in a more concrete sense, there is a way that you can. And that is by shopping at the Electromaker store. We stock a wide variety of things from a wide variety of people, whether you are just starting out in this hobby and you want to get your first Arduino or Raspberry Pi kit, or whether you've been doing this for years and you're looking for something very specific. Maybe you're looking for an order for your work and you need a large amount of something. These are all things that we can help you with. Electromaker does not have any advertisements on its videos. If you've seen an advert on YouTube, that money certainly isn't going to us. This is the way that the Electromaker Show is funded. So if you are enjoying it, consider checking our store out the next time you're going to be looking for componentry. We are not immune to the shortages that have, well, bothered the entire world recently, but we do have a good stock of pretty much everything. So if you want to help us out financially, this is the best way that you can do it. But any kind of support that you're giving us is always massively appreciated, whether that's by you're liking it on YouTube or downloading the podcast or simply just enjoying the show. Anyway, speaking of the show, let's get on with it. Now, moving over to a very quick funding website, Things. And today we're heading to Kickstarter to look at a Raspberry Pi Pico-based STEM learning kit. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's because way back when, the very first episode of this show, we covered Pi 2, which was the follow-up to a Raspberry Pi-based STEM learning kit. The original Pi is still one of my favorite things, just because of the nice hard case it has. The Pi 2 actually upgraded it in many ways, but for me, yeah, that original hard case was something I loved. Now, this is a little bit of a tangent. I just wanted to mention it because I found it interesting that this was a kit based on the Raspberry Pi for STEM learning, and I remember thinking at the time, this would be a great idea. I wish more companies would do this, and since then, companies have. Seed put out that fantastic Arduino kit, which is all connected together, so you can use it without as one PCB, but then you can snap that PCB into different parts and connect those things with Grove connectors. A really nice way of doing it. However, another approach is similar to the Pi model, but using a Raspberry Pi Pico. So what is the Picoder? Well, essentially, it's an all-in-one kit for learning about the Raspberry Pi Pico. It is in a box which is not dissimilar to a sort of kind of component box, and it has various ways that you can wire everything up and use them. So, I mean, if I zoom down to here, you can look at what's actually inside it. And yeah, so you can see here there's an RFID module, there's a little breadboard on board here, there's various user buttons, a buzzer, some LEDs, a servo, a couple of relays, a distance sensor here, and an LED matrix here. Now, what makes this interesting? Well, if you have it set up and it's already in its box like this, it makes it perfect for learners. They don't need to get a bunch of stuff out and connect it all up. And while I am someone who does think it's a good idea to learn how to do that, I do understand that there is a bit of a barrier, especially with kids who might not have the patience to set up a breadboard. All of this is wired up behind the scenes, much like the Pi kits were. That's why I mentioned them before, which allows you to just get going with it. And when you're finished, pull out the USB cable, close it, and it goes on the shelf, dust covered, not going to get damaged, components aren't going to get lost down behind the sofa. It just seems like a really nice approach for this. Another thing I quite like about this board is that there is a slot for Pi Pico hats. Now, I remember saying recently that I love the fact that there is a sort of growing ecosystem of hats for the Raspberry Pi Pico, much like there are shields for the Arduino. I feel like it's one of those things that's going to make people make it a lot easier for people to start working with different sensors and things. Now, of course, it makes sense for them to include a hat here because this same company produces a number of hats for the Raspberry Pi Pico, some of which can be bundled in with this product if you are interested in it. One other thing, and I understand that this might be an interesting and perhaps controversial thing to say, but there's no mention of software libraries for this kit. anywhere on this page. And in my mind, that's actually a relatively good thing. Given that there is a very robust ecosystem of MicroPython libraries already, ones that people would be presumably using as their first touch with the Raspberry Pi Pico, or visual block-based programming languages as well. But the point is, these are already being worked on to incorporate all the different kind of sensors and things that are based on the board. So if you're going to be teaching people how to program using a Raspberry Pi Pico, rather than using a proprietary set of libraries designed just for this kit, you're teaching them the skills they would need to take the things on the kit out and use in real projects. Again, some of you might disagree with that reading of it, but I quite like that. Again, it gets people closer to what they will actually be doing as their next steps in this hobby. And if you are working with younger people who start to get their head around just a few concepts and they get those concepts solid, then you can introduce the hardware concepts without it being an entirely new set of languages. Yeah, I like that. So if you would like to find out more about the Picoder, I will be linking this Kickstarter page in the description, and you can get your hands on one for £115. There was an even cheaper early bird thing, but that comes with a Raspberry Pi Pico W. There are also bundles for classrooms as well, so you can get 5 or 10 of them at a certain reduction. The Kickstarter has reached its goal quite dramatically. They only looked for €565 and they've made €18,000. This is also a company that has made and shipped various things for the Raspberry Pi Pico before. As I mentioned, hardly surprising they have a space for hats here because they have shipped various Raspberry Pi Pico hats on Kickstarter before. This does not mean that this particular Kickstarter is 100% trustworthy, but yes, if you've worked with Kickstarter before and you're looking at companies that have shipped things in the past, it's generally a good sign. So yeah, as I mentioned, there'll be more about this in the description. Okay, so the last section of this show might feel a bit weird because I cut something to put something in. Because right at the point where this show was finished up and all this kind of stuff, LattePanda released a new board, the Sigma. And I thought it was worth putting in this show just simply because of how interesting the timing was. Because we talked about the Zimaboard in this show, the single board server. I'm not wearing my hat, I've just realized. The single board server, which is an x86 single board computer designed for use as a server. And now, LattePanda have released the LattePanda Sigma, a single board computer designed to be a server, a single board server, if you will. Now, I have already written up a blog post about it. You can find that in the description of this video. And the blog post covers everything that you need to know about it in more detail. What I will say now is that this is not something that I think should be directly compared to the Zimaboard for a very simple reason. Yes, they are both single board servers, and yes, as it says here, this kind of legitimizes the idea that single board servers are a thing now. They're a specific kind of single board computer product that are going to be sold to people to use instead of big home lab rack servers, which are still going to always exist. People are always going to want to have their own crazy networking setup. But single box, easy to use single board servers that have a bunch of input and output. As you're seeing, there's got dual 2.5 gigabit Ethernet on there and a bunch of different M2 slots. Where was I going with this? I don't think it makes any sense to compare this to Zimaboard other than the fact that they're both single board servers, for the simple fact that the LattePanda Sigma has an Intel i5 processor on it. It is incredibly powerful. They're calling it a single board server, but it also has dual 8K outputs or something like that. And they talk about using it for video editing and for gaming, and as well as, you know, all the stuff you expect from a server, but don't necessarily think of servers for video editing and gaming apart from in very specific circumstances. Anyway, if it sounds like I am waffling a little bit, I am. But this video, which is from LattePanda, is embedded into the blog, and you can find out everything you need to know about the product from that. As well as that, I've written up my kind of basic first impressions of what this thing looks like, what it might be good for, and some of the things I've waffled about now I said much more succinctly in the article. And of course, we have the full specs of it right here. But yes, the one thing that I'm sure some people will be very interested in finding out straight away is the price of it. And if you would like to get the LattePanda Sigma, there are two models of it. There's a 16 gig RAM, 16 gigabytes version of. There's a version with just 16 gigabytes of RAM for $579. There is another version which has 16 gigabytes of RAM, but it also comes with a 500 gigabyte SSD and a Wi-Fi 6E expansion card that fits in one of the M2 slots, and that is $648. So if you would like to know more about it, do head to the video description, and you can find the link to this blog article there. And both of our links out from here take you to the LattePanda shop, which will take you to the LattePanda Sigma shop, and you can find out all they have to say about it as well, including some benchmarking and all of the various various things that they think it would be good for. One final thing that I thought was worth a mention that I haven't had any chance to look into yet, and I'm going to wait until I have one in my hands because there will be one coming through, hopefully. But this is something that has a very powerful processor on it. But in terms of power usage costs, it shouldn't be quite as much as a general computer that uses an Intel Core i5 processor, because they haven't said exactly how they've done this, but apparently through optimization, they've brought the power usage of a board with these specs down by 50%. I don't know what that means. That's something that I'll have to find out later. However, yeah, this was exciting, and I thought it was definitely worth putting in this week's show, especially given that the news is so fresh. By the time you're watching this, the news is probably still under 24 hours old, depending on how quickly I get the show edited now that I'm talking now instead of editing. But yes, the LattePanda Sigma is here, and it brings pretty much everything I loved about the LattePanda Delta to a single board server configuration. Oh yeah, the final thing I'll say about it. Much like the LattePanda Delta, this has a ATmega32U4 built into it. So an Arduino Leonardo or Pro Micro. The Arduino, the chip that Arduino used for their USB HID board that isn't the Uno. So it has the Arduino IDE built into it, and so you can program it to be a physical computer. So a server box that actually has physical components. It can take data from sensors, it can actuate things based on that sensor data. You could take a bunch of data from sensors, you could do edge AI on the board, because let's face it, it's powerful enough, and do an action with that doesn't have to talk to any other elements of your network, and then your network could just ping in and ping out, and it could send reports that don't have to use any of your home computing power, like my desktop here, for example. I don't know. My first thought when I heard there was going to be a powerful single board computer like this is that I would love to offload some of the rendering for video and image editing stuff that I do onto a server. That would be nice if I could just say, do this away from me so my computer isn't messed up. But then again, maybe I just want to play computer games when I should be rendering. Anyway, this is probably a slightly random section. I just wanted to throw it in because this news came out right in the middle of me putting this show together. And the LattePanda Sigma, if it's something you're interested in, do let me know. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. Is this a really cool idea, or have they just packaged a powerful single board computer and they're calling it a single board server? And if they are, why? As I said before, is this the era of the single board server? That has been our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for all of the support that you continue to show the Electromaker Show. Be that here on YouTube by clicking like and doing the subscribe-y thing, or by shopping in the Electromaker store. We will be back next week for another video. We'll be announcing the winner of the Zimaboard contest. I'd be really interested to hear what some of you think of the Zimaboard as a concept as well. As I've mentioned, I've done some home networking, but it's never been a real passion of mine. I know there are some people in our audience who have been doing home networking as a hobby since it's been possible for a long time. I'd be really interested to hear your take on the Zimaboard. But yes, for now, I hope you have a fun, safe, and creative week, and I'll chat to you soon.